Your apple traveled farther than most people drive in a month, and nobody's making money off it. That Granny Smith in your grocery store was probably picked in Washington state, trucked to a distribution hub in Nevada, stored in a climate-controlled warehouse for weeks, then driven to a regional sorting facility before finally landing on a shelf 500 miles from where it grew. And here's the trick: the farmer who grew it made about $0.12 per pound. The retailer paid $0.30. The rest, the transportation, the refrigeration, the labor, the fuel surcharges, the spoilage buffer, that's where the money actually went. So why doesn't your apple stay local? Because the economics of global food supply chains don't work that way anymore. They haven't for about 50 years. But to understand where your money actually goes, we need to ask, what changed between the farm and your kitchen that made distance cheaper than proximity? Start with containerization. In the 1950s, shipping a crate of produce across the country meant wooden boxes, hand loading, hand unloading, and constant spoilage. Then came the standardized shipping container, a steel box that stacks, locks, and moves seamlessly from truck to train to ship. That single innovation cut transportation costs by roughly 80% in real dollars. Suddenly, it was cheaper to ship apples from across the country than to drive them 50 miles in a refrigerated truck. But containerization only explains part of it. The real story is about consolidation. 100 years ago, you bought apples from a local orchard or a regional packing house. Today, 90% of U.S. apples flow through about 15 major distribution networks. 3 of those networks control more than half the country's apple supply. Centralization meant efficiency, but it also meant distance. Here's where the money goes. The farmer receives about 15% of what you pay. The distributor, the company that buys from dozens of farms and sells to thousands of stores, takes about 40%. The retailer takes about 25%, and the remaining 20%, that's transportation, refrigeration, insurance, spoilage, and the cost of maintaining a supply chain so complex that it requires constant monitoring. But here's the trick: that 20% isn't profit, it's cost, and those costs exist because the system depends on scale. A single distributor warehouse might process 40,000 pounds of apples per day. That's only economical if you're pulling from farms across multiple states. Local, that doesn't work at that volume. Refrigeration is the second invisible cost. Your apple sits in a climate-controlled truck, then a climate-controlled warehouse, then a climate-controlled store shelf. That temperature control costs about $0.03 to $0.05 per pound per month. If your apple spends 4 months in the supply chain, that's $0.12 to $0.20 in refrigeration alone. That's roughly equal to what the farmer made. Why keep apples cold for months? Because centralized supply chains require storage. Farmers harvest seasonally. Consumers demand apples year-round. The gap between those two facts is filled by cold storage warehouses in places like upstate New York and eastern Washington, massive facilities that can hold millions of pounds of apples in controlled atmosphere. The cost per month per pound is tiny. The total cost is enormous. Then there's spoilage. In a centralized system, about 10 to 15% of fresh produce never makes it to your kitchen. It rots in trucks, in warehouses, on shelves. That loss is baked into the price you pay. The retailer doesn't absorb it, the distributor absorbs it and passes the cost upstream. The farmer sees it as lower demand, you see it as higher prices. Fuel surcharges add another 5 to 10% depending on oil prices. Trucking companies can't absorb fuel costs, they pass them to distributors, who pass them to retailers, who pass them to you. When crude oil spiked in 2008, apple prices climbed 30% in 6 months, not because apples became scarcer, but because the cost of moving them tripled. Labor is the final major component. A centralized warehouse requires year-round staff, sorters, packers, quality inspectors, logistics coordinators. A small local orchard can run seasonal labor, but a facility processing 40,000 pounds daily needs permanent payroll. That's a fixed cost that doesn't scale down, so it gets distributed across every apple. Now you might ask, why not just buy local apples? And here's the reality. A farmer's market apple costs more upfront, often $1.50 to $2.00 per pound versus $0.99 at the grocery store. But it skips the distributor, the refrigeration, the months of storage. That apple was picked 3 days ago. It's never been frozen. It costs more because it's cheaper to produce. The grocery store apple is cheaper because it's subsidized by efficiency, the efficiency of moving millions of pounds through a single system. That system only works if you accept distance, delay, and waste as the cost of abundance. For 50 years, that trade-off made sense. Cheap apples everywhere beat expensive apples nowhere. But there's a second-order cost most people don't track: environmental. Refrigerated trucks burn about 35% more fuel than standard trucks. A single apple traveling 500 miles in cold storage generates roughly 10 times the carbon emissions of a local apple. That cost isn't on your receipt, it's paid elsewhere by everyone. So here's the answer to the original question. Your apple travels 500 miles because the economics of consolidation make it cheaper in dollars, not in total cost. The farmer makes less, the distributor makes more, the retailer makes more, you pay less, and everyone else pays the difference in emissions, spoilage, and the erosion of local food systems. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed, but design can change. Some retailers are experimenting with regional distribution hubs, cutting transportation time from 4 months to 4 weeks. Some farmers are forming direct-to-consumer networks, eliminating the distributor entirely. These models cost more upfront. Whether they're worth it depends on what you think the true price of an apple should include. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. If you want to understand where your money actually goes in everyday systems like food, housing, and healthcare, subscribe. We break down one hidden cost every week. Subscribe, we break down one hidden cost every week. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.